Recently, there's been a Twitter war raging on about how strong the Otsutsuki god is. Just for some context, Shibai is a fairly new introduced character who lived several millennia ago, which means at least 3,000 years ago. Having harvested chakra fruits from countless worlds across the universe and being resurrected so many times using Kāma, he evolved into Godhood. Some people think that he's the strongest character in fiction, which is kind of funny. But there's others who believe that he's featless, which is equally as funny. Firstly, the definition of feat literally means achievement. Clearly Shibai has achievements, at least allegedly. Now obviously take Shibai's lore with a grain of salt because it will be expanded upon, and we might even see Boruto interact with him. But right now, I think we have enough evidence to determine how strong he is at least. With me today, I brought 5, or was it 6? Anyway, I heard you rate apples more than strawberries, is that true?
Yeah, of course. Apples are way better than strawberries. I appreciate you having me back on the channel.
You should be locked up for that take. That's a bit too controversial for my liking. But anyway, as a separate debate, let's talk about Shibai, my bad. So getting into this, what do we know? The first thing I should probably say is that reaching Godhood didn't cause him to ascend. Rather, from my understanding at least, while having Godhood status, Shibai's jutsu became shinjutsu, and he was still alive, at least physically, when he was given the title of Godhood.
I mean, yeah, it seems to be implied that he had the godhood while he was alive, so I'll agree.
Yeah, also, shinjutsu, from my understanding, is divine techniques. According to Amado, all ninjutsu are cheap imitations of ninjutsu, therefore are, weaker, technically speaking. Because shinjutsu don't require hand signs, they work passively. Just a wave of Shibai's hand basically caused storms, and when he roared, it would cause thunder.
Yeah, because hand signs are used to basically concentrate your chakra. One day, seemingly, he died, and Amado somehow came across his dead body, which is very suspicious. We still don't know how he came into, possession of it. Maybe it was from Ishiki. Amado was able to splice his DNA in order to reproduce some of this Otsutsuki god Shinjutsu. And when he implanted this DNA into different cyborgs like Code, Ada, and Damon, they have these watered down usages of what should be a completely broken ability, like omnipotence and whatnot, because Code's claw marks are stated to be Shinjutsu, the Senrigan, and Damon's abilities. So, yeah.
Yeah, I almost forgot that he had Code's abilities as well, but we know, if you're talking about the Senrigan, I think that's one of the abilities that is, it's not his most powerful one, but it's his dojutsu. It grants Shibai clairvoyance by projecting his consciousness anywhere present, not future, just past or present. And it can go as far back as when he was born, his birth, which was, as we established, at least 3,000 years ago. He's probably much older than this, I wouldn't be surprised if he is. And it isn't just limited to the normal universe, he can see things in other dimensions, kind of how Ada sees or spectated Ishiki's death, which happened in another dimension.
The second ability, obviously the one Damon holds, is the automatic and instant reflection of all harmful intent back onto his opponent. The ability can also protect the person he's touching, but doesn't have to necessarily. Now, the only drawback to the ability is that he needs to be making contact with another person in order to activate it, and specifically he has to have his palm touching them. However, it hasn't been elaborated on if this is only Damon's limitation, because it could very well be the case that Shibai doesn't have that limitation. We know that Damon and Ada aren't Otsutsuki, they're just Otsutsuki-fied, sort of like Kawaki and Boruto. So they can't control Chibai's power fully or properly, at least according to Momo. And Momo does claim that he has knowledge of all Shinjutsu to ever exist, so.
Yeah, it wouldn't make any sense for Momoshiki to be lying in this case. It does bring us on to the other ability that he should have, which is omnipotence. If he uses it, Shibai should be able to make anything he desires become reality. Yes, it does sound kind of broken. We don't know exactly the limitations of his jutsu, of his shinjutsu. The first known use of his shinjutsu was when Ada decided all those around her, other than her brother and Otsutsuki, to deeply fall in love with her. For an unknown reason, both Sarada and Sumire can resist this power. Do you have any theories on why they can resist it?
It's probably just down to her desire again, and she really desires for those two to just be her friend, so they can resist it, because they're not Otsutsuki-fied, at least to our knowledge, so there should be no other reason other than that they can resist it. Ada desired to please Kawaki, so she rewrote the memories of everyone on a global scale, possibly even greater than that, because it affected Code, who we know is in another dimension. Meaning it also maybe affected Naruto and Hinata, but we really don't know.
Momoshiki also claimed that omnipotence isn't a genjutsu that can just be undone, but rather it's like permanent reality. I think we talked about this off screen a little bit. And Shibai's most powerful and ultimate ability is this shinjutsu right here, which is apparently in another league compared to all of the other shinjutsu. It's apparently this programming language that gods use to create these perfect realities or worlds, suggesting that the Otsutsuki gods have altered mankind's memories like puppets countless times without them even noticing. I think it's more of a, basically you can just wish whatever you want and it can just happen, but in that case in particular what happened was through chakra and the interconnected nature of chakra, everybody's memories would change.
So Shibai should be able to create abilities, and we don't know if it has to be like something like Nin where you have to have a restriction on your ability to make it stronger. But this is what I was talking about earlier with Damon's ability, why he might not have the limitation that Damon has where you have to place your palm on somebody. If he could just make the ability, he could also, in theory, just make it to where that isn't a restriction, and then just have that any ill will aimed at him gets reflected back onto you.
Is like having shinjutsu a thing or a trait that only gods have or any Otsutsuki can?
I mean, they are called godly techniques, but it seems to me like different people with pieces of God's power can wield shinjutsu, but the like downfall is they can't use it to its maximum capabilities.
Yeah, I guess this moves us on to like the most interesting thing that people really want to hear about. So those are all of like Shibai's abilities, but I think what's most interesting about him is that of the several cycles of evolution and the eating god fruits, etc., Shibai was hypothesized by Amado to have ascended to a higher dimensional level. This is a little bit controversial, but he left his physical body in the third dimension, implying that Shibai exists within the fourth dimension or possibly higher. The theory was based on the fact that he discarded his body. There's probably other things that influenced this theory, since Amado most likely dissected and studied Shibai's body. We don't know how he came across it. Like you said, it might be because Ishiki supplied him with the body. It might be another weird reason. I doubt that he just looked at his body and he was like, this guy ascended to a higher dimension. There must be like more to it. While this theory could have been wrong, I heavily doubt it because Momoshiki privately verified it or confirmed it to Boruto. And he said that the theory was completely correct, and he should be pretty reliable, since we know that Momoshiki said that he can peek into this higher dimension, so he confirmed his existence, essentially. And I don't think it's that far-fetched considering that, especially Momoshiki has an understanding of his clan's history. He talks about the laws of his clan, he can temporarily freeze time and do other weird and wacky things.
So I guess moving on to his lore, a common refutation is that the Naruto verse is heavily inspired by Buddhist concepts like samsara, which is the cycle of reincarnation. When beings die, depending on how they lived, they reincarnate within one of the 6 realms. The goal of a Buddhist is to instead transcend the 6 realms to reach nirvana, which is a metaphysical plane. Now granted, that is only inspiration for Chibai's lore, there's no debate about it.
Yeah, and if he is going to this like metaphysical realm or whatever, it should be beyond concepts, right? Since metaphysical things are conceptual, so therefore it would be beyond time, space, and even dimensionality. But I doubt that's the case. That's why it seems like a very highballed interpretation. Just because you're inspired by something doesn't mean you literally embody those inspirations, right? Or those concepts.
Yeah.
If you look at the Japanese kanji about what's being said exactly, Shibai rather ascended to, I quote, a kojigen. So what does that term actually mean? Luckily for us, this term only has one definition. It doesn't have multiple definitions, it has only one definition, so don't listen to what others say about the term, listen to the facts. Jisho, which is the best Japanese to English dictionary, also every other dictionary as well. Kojigen means high dimension, semicolon, higher dimensions. Semicolons are used to give additional information and connect sentences together. The term highlighted also has a smaller grey font, and it says mathematics. So the context here is mathematics, right? For example, the word section on this same website, you can see that they have multiple definitions, right? So they're divided up into, there's one mathematical definition and then there's one non-mathematical definition. In context, Shibai ascended to a higher mathematical dimension since that's the only context that can be used there.
Especially hearing everything Bullet had to say, if you still think that this isn't the most likely interpretation, you're probably just being disingenuous. So with Japanese words and, you can manipulate context and whatnot, you have to look at the context of what's being said. He left behind his physical body Amato's talking about how he's reaching godhood. He's saying how he ascended higher, so that's clear he's going to a higher dimension. So it makes far more sense for it to be a mathematical one rather than, I don't know, the dimension above the Naruto realm one, right? That wouldn't really make any sense.
I was just looking at the definition, right? From my understanding, there's only one definition, so almost interpreting it another way seems a little bit unfair. I mean, it is possible, but it wouldn't make sense in the context regardless. And another thing I commonly see is people claiming that Shibai is 5D because he ascended beyond the normal universe, which is 4D. I don't think the normal universe is even fourth dimensional, it's third dimensional. A dimension is a measurement. The normal universe has 3 spatial measurements, that being length, width, and depth, plus time, which granted is a dimension, but it's not a spatial measurement, it's a temporal measurement. So the universe is 3 spatial dimensions plus 1 temporal dimension, that being time. If this is tricky to grasp, imagine a drawing. Drawings are 2D. Cartoons are also 2D, but they can also move because there's time flowing within them. A cartoon isn't all of a sudden 3D now because we got 2 dimensions of space plus 1 dimension of time. In the same way, humans aren't 4D for existing in a 3D realm with time flowing through it. Basically, 4D means to exist in a place with more than 3 spatial dimensions, 4 spatial dimensions. So Shibai existing within a dimension that has 4 spatial dimensions or measurements would mean that he is by extension 4D. He has 4D existence. The same way a 2D or 4D object can't exist in a 3D dimensional space, since everything in a third dimension is made up of atoms which have 3 dimensions, length, width, and depth. So everything in the 4th dimension works in the same way. It's made up of building blocks that are 4th dimensional. So Shibai's attacks should be that level by default since he just exists within that.
Now, how fast is Shibai? Well, speed is determined by the equation speed equals distance divided by time. Distance is the measurement of any of the first 3 spatial dimensions, like the length, width, and depth. Since the 4th dimension has an extra spatial dimension, this formula can't work to determine speed. In other words, it requires something else. This is technically classed as 3D infinite speed. Infinite speed is movement beyond linear distance. This is why speed cannot be measured. Given that speed equals distance divided by time, if distance is undefined, the speed formula cannot be applied.
Yeah, does that mean he can just move anywhere instantly? Is that how it works?
Yeah, he should be able to move anywhere third dimensional instantly, basically. So he should have infinite 3D speed.
So since we agree with the stuff we said earlier, let's talk about whether you think Shibai retains all of his Shinjutsu after leaving his physical body. Do you think that's the case?
I would like more insight on where he actually ascended to and what it's about. I mean, maybe he got a bunch of new 4D jutsu that don't matter. We really have no idea, but I mean, it is possible.
Leaving his physical body behind in the third dimension might indicate that he lost all his Shinjutsu since they're considered these physical traits that Amato can dissect and, you can remove his DNA. Or he might just retain them if you believe that he still has omnipotence, which is a Shinjutsu, and he's using it to oversee and manipulate the Naruto-verse from behind the scenes, which is also kind of implied by Momoshiki, so I guess it's just up for interpretation, right?
Right.
So what do you think Shibai's intentions are? Do you think he's good or evil? It could be the case that Shibai is a good or neutral being since, from my understanding, I think Boruto is inspired by Buddhism very heavily. The goal of Buddhism is to, and we mentioned in this video actually, is to escape the cycle of reincarnation to achieve nirvana. And if Shibai is, or has already done that, right, then he could be trying to help people also reach that. Or it's kind of displayed as a positive thing, reaching his realm, since he's kind of letting everything go, letting all his possessions go, and he's achieving this, I guess, this righteous state of mind where he, he doesn't think about anything else since he's let go of everything.
He's very clearly in pursuit of power, but I think he's just straight up evil. So he sacrificed countless worlds for one, implying his indifference to countless lives being sacrificed so the chakra fruits can, even come to exist in the first place. And he seemingly wants to become this peerless, perfect being, which to me just embodies narcissism. So I think he's just a narcissistic murderer man, and then he just went higher. Momoshiki also implies that the gods are constantly manipulating humanity's memories in history, and he says it in a very malicious way, but we do know Momo is evil, so I won't count that against Shibai. So there's definitely a lot backing up Chibai being a major villain, but I don't know if we'll ever even get to see him. I do think that he is evil though.
I should also mention that Shibai in Japanese means drama or acting, so there's definitely something weird going on with his character. Amado could be Shibai or it could be something else since we know he found him, so he's definitely connected to Shibai in some sort of way. It's definitely very sus. I think Amado is a pretty sus character in general. Or rather, Amado is maybe Shibai's 3D avatar or something like that. Maybe he's even manipulating him.
Maybe Chibai got banished out of the realm and then now he has to interact with it through Amado to revive himself or something. Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, it's all really interesting shit, but do you think Boruto will most likely interact with Shibai, if he does exist, that is?
No. I mean, if so, and Chibai is evil, he could even be Boruto's opponent who Boruto beats up, but I really wouldn't like that. I think it'd be kind of stupid. Boruto like gets a friendship amp and hits him with a vanishing Rasengan or something. I think that'd be kind of dumb. Like Hashimaru did in, Samurai 8, but Samurai 8 sucked because Hashimaru, got canceled. You can talk about that more in depth if you want to. I didn't really read it.
There's definitely a possibility that he can interact with Shibai. Obviously, it would be a bit weird if Boruto becomes like this higher dimensional being or whatever. Like, how would he even draw that? It doesn't really make a lot of sense. But it is possible since we see in Samurai 8 that the main goal of a protagonist was to ascend to higher dimensions and become this flawless, perfect hero who is at complete ease with his mind. So I think it's more of like a Buddhism thing where like his mind is at complete ease and he's let all of his possessions go. How he'd be drawn is a little bit interesting. I mean, we know in Samurai 8 the protagonist is drawn normally. It's just that I think he said that all of his stats become like infinite once he's at complete ease or something like that. And we know that Kishimoto, of course, Samurai 8 wasn't a complete success or anything, but he could be trying to turn Boruto into a Samurai 8 to maybe finish the story that he never properly got to finish, and he didn't really get the chance to do that, so it's at least interesting to think about. Anyway, we should probably make it clear to everybody that nobody in the Narutoverse scales to Shibai, right?
As a matter of fact, they're all infinitely weaker than him.
Exactly.
Literally.
He's a pinnacle of his verse as it currently stands, but how do you think he matches up against other verses? I'll let you slander Bleach for a little bit.
The Soul King gets beat up, Ichigo gets beat up, Yuha gets beat up, and then put Ichigo, Soul King, and Yuha same time, make them do the fusion dance, they still get beat up. Naruto vs Ichigo is not important here. I care nothing about what anyone thinks about Naruto vs Ichigo. Outside of that one Aizen statement that every Bleach fan misinterprets to try to get Ichigo and them to 5D, where Aizen's like, oh, same way a 2D being can't interact with a 3D being, I can't touch him. He's literally just talking about power there, by the way.
Well, we know he doesn't mean it literally because I think like he uses it as a comparison. If he meant it literally, right, and he thought Ichigo was also a dimension above him, he wouldn't be able to see him, interact with him at all. You see what I mean? So it's definitely more of a comparison thing. Whereas I think we've proven that Lucio Shibai is more of a literal thing since he's leaving his physical body behind. I don't think, these guys have to do the same thing, so I'd probably be inclined to agreeing with you, but if we're talking about something like the Soul King, I think it's a little bit more questionable. Obviously, the whole Bleach versus Naruto debate is kind of interesting. I don't really want to talk about it too much here since I'll probably make my own video on the topic eventually anyway. And the next verse that I think would definitely get soloed, and I think that this verse gets soloed even easier than Bleach, right? At least if we're comparing them to Shibai, is One Piece. And I think that's a fact. Like, how would you even debate against that? Unless you think Luffy's fifth gear is too strong, right? And is this higher dimensional thing, right? Where his Tune Force can control all of reality and destroy higher dimensions, which I doubt, right? Because I think what people don't really understand is just because you have Tune Force doesn't mean you're invincible, right? There's different levels of it. It's kind of like having durability negation, right? There's different types of durability negation. Not everybody has the same type, right? So I think it's very disingenuous to think that, Luffy can beat anybody in fiction because he has a little bit of Tune Force, right? It doesn't even make sense. But I know you don't want to talk too much about that because you haven't read One Piece, right?
Yeah, no.
What about Dragon Ball? Do you think Shibai can solo Dragon Ball?
I respectfully will not answer that question publicly.
Okay, I guess Six ain't gonna answer that. That's up to him. But I guess I can give my opinion on what I think. It's quite tricky because if you think about it, Goku should be stronger than Zamasu, who fused with a multiverse and was seeping into alternate timelines. If you believe that, then I think Shibai might struggle against those kind of like characters, since you could argue that's like a fourth dimensional thing, and then it kind of comes down to abilities. So although I don't really believe fourth dimensional Dragon Ball, it's definitely an argument. And you can even argue that they're multiversal, which would put them on par with these kind of characters like Shibai. So I guess it's up to your interpretation. Do you think they're both fourth dimensional and then it just comes down to abilities, since Shibai does have some really cool abilities? Or do you think it like just comes down to like raw power? Since we know in Dragon Ball you can like bypass hacks through power. Obviously this video was slightly clickbait, because there's a lot of shonen characters, and there's a lot of shonen verses like Digimon, Saint Seiya, and Maggie, who completely slam Shibai without any difficulty, considering that they range upwards of 4D, 5D, and even beyond dimensionality for some of them, right? Some of them are even like boundless. I think you'd have to be very generous to Shibai to think that you can compete with these guys. You probably have to use like Buddhist law and take that quite literally and exaggerate everything he has to get him to that level, and even then it seems a bit weird to kind of get him there. Anyway, if you still disagree with any of the stuff that me and Six mentioned, I'd genuinely be surprised. Don't forget to subscribe to me, like this video if you want to see more content like this in the future, and also check out Six's channel. Any last words, Six?
No, I'm good.
Okay, so voice your opinion on this matchup if you disagree. I'm also going to link my Discord down below so you guys can let me know if you have differing opinions on there. And thanks for watching. Peace out.